All right. On the lunch break and on the last mid-afternoon break, several people approached me and said, I'm not really one for taking the microphone, but there's a question I'd love to ask. So I'm going to ask and several people came with the same couple of questions. A good few people actually came with the same couple of questions. So we'll go there first, and then I'll ask you, what are your personal takeaways, and what do you want people to leave with? And we'll close out that way. So the first question is, and it was something that stood out for people from David Marquet's presentation, where he said how poorly Denmark is performing regarding safety. And people are interested in, well, how do you guys feel about that? Why do you think that is, and what do you think needs to happen? So, Martin, can I start with you?
Yeah. So I guess
you
first part,
so
am I surprised? No, I'm not surprised. I think actually it's probably not that well known out in the front line and throughout. So throughout a lot of these incident-free sessions we had last year, I actually asked the audience, which was a mix of our own people and a lot of contractors from different companies, where they thought we were and how we were performing. And I think that was a huge surprise for most, because most thought that we were actually in the top half in terms of support. So I think actually the key part for me is making that visible as well, and because again driving the reflection and say, let's not believe that we are already doing great.
Sure.
And that's what I meant in my opening sermon. I'm really pleased about the minister and how we compare to onshore part,
yes.
But we have so much more work to do before we can really be satisfied with our performance.
Sure, got it.
Yeah, really, we need to never get satisfied with the performance we have. We need to continuously improve. There's been an improvement from 2014 to 15, I believe.
Sure, yeah.
So really, and also getting back to what we're doing in HES with lean thinking and lean leadership, never get satisfied, and take this really as an opportunity, I think, to say, okay, we need to up our game, we need to improve even further, we need to mobilize everybody in the problem solving.
Yes.
And particularly, I think we need to, in OGD, perhaps have another look at whether we can task the OGD safety and lead an effort there to understand this problem better. Why is it that Denmark is in the bottom quartile? And then say, okay, how can we work closer together to improve faster and keep improving?
Yeah, and to follow up on that, I would say in the respect to OGD, there's one party missing here, that's the service companies.
Mm-hmm.
So keep in mind that OGD also works very closely with the service companies, and I think we can only solve this together, so whether that is between the oil companies and the service companies and the regulators, by the way.
Yes.
So it really also encourages everybody, all companies and new operators in the sector to join OGD and participate actively in this work, so we can really improve continuously and bring us up the scale there of quartile placement.
Got it.
Yeah, as a new operator starting up then with production in the middle of this year, I take this number, as it were, more as an impulse, and I think that's how the industry should view it. We cannot be complacent, and regardless of where we are relative, we should always aim to improve. I think what it does, though, is it just gives a bigger impulse into our improvement measures and what we want to do to move further up the scale, as it were. And that's something that we see that across, whether in the UK, the Netherlands, or in Denmark. It will be continuously something that we focus on. So I don't sort of hang by the number, but I think what it does is that it just gives a stronger impulse. We put a mirror up to ourselves and say, okay, we really do need to do better.
Sure. One thing we could use that increased cooperation with was to look at, are there any denominators at the issues we're seeing? So, Denmark's sticking out like that. Are there any cultural or any other issues in our sector where we stick out? And I think that could be very interesting. As I mentioned in the first talk we had, we focus very much on the understanding of risk, and we see some issues there.
Yes.
But it might be other things that are relevant for Denmark, and I think that we need to pick that up.
Sure. Got it. Thank you. Another question that's come up is people remember back to last year and they say, well, last year's conference was titled and themed working together. And what do you guys do? They want to know, what do you guys do about working together, and what are you doing going forward about working together?
So maybe I can start reflecting, because I joined back in the Danish business almost at the time of the safety conference last year, and I was very encouraged by it. And I think actually stepping into it, I think we do a lot across the industry, and I've been quite pleased and encouraged actually by what's happening. And I see it especially, when we talk safety, we say there's no hierarchy, and for me, whoever's on my platform is my accountability and responsibility. And what I see is a huge effort going into the collaboration between, our service partners and the companies. So a lot of effort on training, where we train across companies. A lot of effort, a lot of the companies that are not represented here maybe should be. Semco, Q-Star, to mention a few. We see the effort that these guys are putting into the programs as part of onboarding. So when we start construction campaigns, for instance, etc., there's an onboarding happening already in the company, and then usually we'll have a day-year campaign where we talk about safety expectations across the companies. So I actually see a lot of collaboration happening across the industry, which is really encouraging.
Sure.
And I think we are playing the same game there.
But of course, we have a task in ensuring that collaboration, and it comes back to the behaviors and attitudes. So we also need to make sure that the in-kind contribution we are giving into this work, that we as leaders praise that, and people can see the reward of it.
Right.
When we did start OGD up on the safety side, we did have issues of people being put in work groups and said, okay, I'm being appointed to this work group, but my boss didn't even praise it, and it's not in my bonus or whatever they would say. So we have a task of making sure that is recognized.
But I see that actually with some of our foreman program, where we've taken not just the supervisors, but also the foreman and done some leadership work with that, where the service companies are paying the hours, etc., and where we might provide the training, etc. But that said, I think there's much more we can do, and we need to continue that journey. But we should also be positive and recognize that a lot is already happening across our industry.
Sure.
And I think we also need to take note of where that collaboration starts. It's not just at the operation end, it goes all the way back to when we actually do our designs and when we're coming up with the ideas pre-feed, going into feed. And that's a key part of also the collaboration chain. And that's something that we do when we are putting our developments in place.
Right.
And I think also the service companies have a large part to play in this, because they are the one entity that see the difference in the operators and where the opportunities to, where the inconsistency, to reference back to some of the points made by the prior speakers, so that we can identify these inconsistencies and bring them up at OGD safety committee with the right people and really problem solve them, so we can harmonize and cooperate closer. For instance, on the golden rules, if they're very different, the interpretation would be one example. Flush that up and understand that through some of the sub-suppliers.
Right, got it. Are there questions? Yes, sir. Can we get a microphone? This gentleman here.
Yes, with David McCabe in mind, our thinking from the leader's perspective, how do they think the people perceive them when they go offshore? When they go offshore and visit them, how do they think people perceive them? How do they think people react to them, and how they do stuff?
You guys think they're perceived? Okay,
yes.
Got it. Yeah. How do you think you're perceived?
I think sometimes it changes. I think the initial arrival, probably people think is an inspection, and there's a component of that as well.
Yeah.
But I think when one spends the whole day out there talking to operators, talking to the E&I, you get into what their day-to-day issues are, what their problems are, but also what's enthusing them, what's encouraging them, and also building a better understanding of what's going on outside of the platform. So I think it's a mixed variable bag that runs from potentially an inspection thought all the way to performance thought.
Right. How do you think you're perceived?
It's a good question. And obviously, I don't know, but I do get some feedback, and I choose to believe that's the truth. But I think often I really enjoy going offshore, and for me, looking at Todd's stick, at the sharp end, you can say, do the things really work the way we expect them to work, right? What are the real issues, etc. And I think it's extremely important that we have that link. And I think it also depends how you do it, as you say, because it's, you know, if you really take the time and sit down in the coffee shop and have a coffee and speak to people, you start to hear sort of the real stories, and then you're approachable, and then I think when people see that you're really interested, there's also usually very, very good positive feedback, and there's also an opportunity to actually relay some of the, you know, where we're heading as a business, give some insight they might not hear otherwise, and ask some questions. So I think that engagement to me is just crucial, and the more the better.
I think you're right. I think it's about also referencing back, having the right behaviors when you go offshore. And then every time you do, there's more confidence. So it's about back to lean again, leader standard work, so that you actually go to the work site and you engage and you spend time not just questioning, but really understanding working with the crews and understanding the problems so that you can support. And then the support is the point that you take the learning home, and then you try and improve the framework. So the more you do that, the more they see that behavior, the more the attitude will change, I think. So it's about frequency, it's about doing it often, and it's about engaging across the organization, so that you really instill the confidence in the entire crew that this is really the behavior that they see.
Yeah, so hopefully you do it at a frequency and in a way where it falls naturally. And if I see anything special be setting up for me going offshore, I would react to it. And they don't, by the way. And then I also think on the behavioral side, we were talking a lot about the, you know, giving the empowerment to the sharp end that David was talking about. And if you want to do that, we had the wording about what words, we saw trust coming in there. And I think that combination of trust and passion, that you can so easily show when you're out there. So if you want to indulge that behavior, that's a great opportunity for doing that when you're out.
Yeah. So I'm going to hold your feet to the flames a tiny bit here, if you'll allow me. I just heard a lot of good intention expressed, and I've got no doubt that's the case. How do you think you're perceived? Was his question.
I think you should ask our employees.
Right.
But you know, can you trust your feedback? I don't know. But if people come up to you and say, "Hey, it was actually really good to see you out here. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Thanks for, you know, being interested in, you know, what we do and how it works and how the tools works." I think you have to take that as a
indeed.
You know,
and I don't. I'm not wishing to create an awkward moment or to go answer the question properly, but it's actually, I think it's a question worth staying with. It's a question worth asking all the time. You know, it's like,
you need some humbleness
perceived?
around it.
Yes, indeed.
And I think it's not a simple answer, because I think the groups that you've engaged regularly, where you build up a relationship and they know you, I think you're perceived as quite supporting and understanding. Yes. And I think if you're new and you come from a different culture and then you need to be embedded in that, I think you can have some individuals that will be not trusting in the initial stage. So I think you need to be realistic about what relationship you build up.
For sure.
We do actually measure to some extent. We have people matter surveys for the employees where we ask them all kind of questions.
Yes.
Is your salary high enough? We don't get high scores on that. But there's also asked about the management and how they promote safety. And so on that one, we can easily follow the trend. That goes for the direct manager, but also the man on top. How is that perceived? So we do actually look at this. And normally we score pretty high.
Sure.
But I think there's a lot of value in the immediate feedback you get when you actually are offshore. Yeah. And that's where one takes the sort of that perception.
Getting it when you're there,
when you're there, or also when you just got back at the heliport, or a couple of days later from the production super. So that's where one takes that. And as you said, in terms of the frequency, when you're out there every 2 months or every a month or so, then that's something that you can build on.
Yeah.
And that's how one forms one's opinion there.
Indeed. Thank you for the question. What are your personal takeaways from today? What did all of that happened in here today? Offer you?
I drive a Volvo. I appreciate the part. I think that's one of my Key, I think there was actually all the speakers had some really good parts, both about role modeling behavior with Peter coming in and what that drive and passion and I think if you think about that, you get a different relation to the person when you open something up and tell something about yourself, the personal story, and I think that's extremely strong. And then I think from Todd's very much about the presence of defenses and having a different view. And I'll certainly go back to my shop and be more interested in the how. And we had a pretty good discussion around the table on that one. I might still ask why as well, but I'll certainly be asking more about the how to understand. So what are the things we can take away or do differently to ensure it doesn't happen. So this presence of defenses, I think, is really good a capacity. That's certainly something that really struck a chord to me. And then raising the dog. But we both have a puppy at home, so we discussed that.
I think the develop people, that was one of David McKay's key points, and how it really resonate, how 10 years after, he has contact back to his crew to hear where have they developed into, what new roles, what exciting work are they doing, and really the key point about developing people to keep increasing performance and striving for perfection. That was a key point. I think also the model about complexity of incidents, that we have the process safety, which is a very complex matter where you need to look at the capacity in your system, you need to have assurance programs, you need to make sure all your barriers, your technical barriers, your training, your competence, your bow tie approach to that very complex problem, that you have one approach to that through assuring capacity, and then your more simple events where perhaps there is a case for more involvement of the workforce at the workplace to do the investigation and do the learning, and then coaching, empowering them to do the problem solving and coming up with the new standards for preventing those types of incidents.
To me, what's been great about this conference has been that we have really moved away from talking about managing safety and talking about the leadership, which is also the title for the conference. And to me, when you talk about leadership, it's really about what handles, with the limited amount of resources that everyone has, what are the handles I can turn that has the biggest impact on my organization in the way we wanted to move forward. And each year that would look different. So what we did 3 years ago won't work today, or partly won't work today. So coming here, having that inspiration on, well, actually, maybe you should look at the empowerment of the sharp end. Maybe you should look more at how we, someone told me the other day, culture eats strategy for lunch. And I think we talked about the behavior and attitudes, and that is exactly the point. So a lot of good inspiration on that true leadership, because we can so easily dive into a hole, we need a campaign on dropped objects. But maybe that is not the best way to use our time. Maybe there's something else. And so the ability to step back and think about the inspiration from this and from other things, I think is super important. So for me, that has been the red line through this conference.
Got it, very clear.
And I would second that, and also that it hasn't been about the statistics. For me, it's not a conference about statistics and numbers and the like, but rather the passion, the enthusiasm behind thinking differently, thinking diversely around the topic of safety and of leadership. I think we've had a lot of brilliant speakers today. We've had a lot of brilliant questions also, and the engagement to me is something that I also take away. That kind of the provocation also in part of the questions that have come, and statements that have come out of the presentations and the talks. I think the journey itself is unending, and that's something that I see. So on this 10th anniversary, it won't be the last one. There will be more. We have a much longer journey ahead of us, but it's really the journey that makes it, rather than just the end of it.
So our title and our theme this year was Greater Results Because of You. So to all the you sitting around us, what do you have to say in completing the conference? What way do you want people to leave acting and thinking?
Everyone can make a difference.
I think, safety is in our individual and collective hands. It's how we relate to it, how we learn from it, and how we share it, how we choose to act. That's the choice that we have to make, and we will make each and every day. So let's make those choices count for the better.
Challenge yourself so you can develop and take the control.
And I think we also heard a lot about complexity, and we are in a complex business. So this thing, you know, we're not improving safety by putting in more processes, more procedures, more, you know, patches and actions. You know, if we can simplify, actually, we improve safety. And I think, as I said at the beginning, I think if each person in here can find something, I can't tell people what they should relate to. You know, it's up to you.
Right.
But I found something to relate to, and I really hope you all found something to relate to. Again, if you can take just one or two things back, and then you know, tomorrow when you're hit by all the emails, actually see through that and say, I'm really committed. This has really moved me, and I want to go in and make a change. Fantastic. Then I think it's been successful.
Yes. Very good.
Yeah, and then I think we need to be brutally honest on what works and doesn't work. And I think encourage people to speak up and take that open debate that we talked about. That you have that trust in bringing it up. That you have the trust of showing you're vulnerable or you don't understand. Or
saying you don't know.
Yeah. Say you don't know. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else, gentlemen?
Yeah, one thing. I really liked the last part that Gordon had, where he was talking about the 5 main topics for the organization. And I'm so proud to be in this business. And I know sometimes we hear other stuff from the really streamlined academic political statements we hear once in a while. But don't forget, we turn resources into welfare. And that's our prime objective. And in doing that, that should be sustainable, successful, and safe.
Yeah.
Maybe not at all. Safe first, sorry. But
Sure.
That's what we're here for.
Sure.
And we shouldn't forget that.
Well, great.
I think it's good.
Thank you very much for
Great
the opportunity to
conference.
have these conversations and for sharing them with all the folks here. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.